The only thing my husband David asked of me when he said goodbye was, "Please don't go to the retreat property, Naomi. Promise me." He squeezed my hand with the last vestiges of strength he had left, his eyes pleading. I promised him. I always respected his wishes, even when curiosity consumed me. But a few years after his death, curiosity finally won, and what I found on that property would change my life forever. Now, I understand why my husband wanted so much to keep me away from there. 17 years of marriage to David ended in a hospital bed following a massive stroke that no one could have predicted. At 58 years old, I found myself a widow with a daughter in college and a feeling of emptiness that seemed endless. While organizing his affairs, I discovered there was much more to my husband than I ever knew. It was a regular Tuesday when his attorney, Mr. Harrison, called me into his office. 2 months had already passed since the funeral. Life continued its cruel course of normality, while I was still trying to figure out how to breathe without David nearby. "Mrs. Sterling, I have something I must deliver to you," Mr. Harrison said, sliding a small box and an envelope across his polished wooden desk. David left specific instructions that this was only to be delivered after his passing. The box contained a heavy antique key with a leaf-shaped metal keychain. The envelope bore my name in David's unmistakable handwriting. "What is this key for?" I asked, turning it over in my fingers. "It's for a property in Lake Arrowhead. Your husband purchased it approximately 4 years ago, but he left explicit instructions that you were only to learn about it after his death." My heart pounded. David didn't own any other properties besides our home. He never mentioned a country retreat. More importantly, why did he make me promise never to go there only to reveal its existence later? "It's called the Crestwood Estate," the attorney continued. "Apparently it was the house where David spent part of his childhood. He reacquired it after many years, though it had changed hands several times." "Wait, this doesn't make sense," I interrupted. David always avoided talking about his childhood. When I brought up Lake Arrowhead, he would get tense and change the subject. "Why would he buy a house there?" Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. "I couldn't tell you, ma'am. But there's another important detail. The property has become extremely valuable in the last 2 years." "How so?" "A large developer, Summit Resorts, is building a luxury resort in the area. Your husband's property is strategically located. They have already made several multi-million-dollar offers for the house." My head was spinning. David had never been wealthy. We lived comfortably on his engineer's salary and mine as a university professor, but nothing that would allow him to buy a second house, especially in a desirable area like Lake Arrowhead. And why keep it a secret? With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. "My dearest Naomi, if you are reading this, it means I left sooner than I expected. Forgive me for all the secrets I kept. The house is yours now. Over the past 4 years, I transformed that somber place from my childhood into something I hope you find beautiful. I know I made you promise never to go there. I am undoing that promise now. In fact, I ask you to go just once before you decide what to do with the property. In the house's study, you will find my laptop. The password is the date of our first meeting followed by the word hope, the word you taught me to feel again. I love you more than I could ever express. David." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even in death, David still had the power to surprise me. "I need to see this place," I said. "There is a complication," Mr. Harrison interrupted. "David's family is contesting the will. His brother Marcus Sterling alleges that David was not mentally capable when he purchased the property." "That's absurd. My husband was the most lucid and centered person I've ever known." "Even so, they have filed legal motions. Considering the current value of the property, this could turn into a complicated battle." I pocketed the key, a sudden determination seizing me. "I'm going to Lake Arrowhead today." Queuing up the video David had labeled for Chloe when she needs it. Her face paled. He made videos. He knew he was dying. "He was diagnosed 3 years ago with a cerebral aneurysm," I said softly, finally sharing the truth. "He chose not to tell us. He wanted to spare us watching him wither." "That's impossible." He would have told me. But uncertainty was already creeping into her voice. "Watch the video, Chloe. Listen to him. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. David's face appeared, healthy, vibrant, his eyes crinkling with that smile that was so characteristic of him. "Hello, my brilliant girl. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And knowing you, you're probably angry about all the secrets I kept." He chuckled softly. "You never liked being kept in the dark about anything, even as a kid." Tears welled in Chloe's eyes as her father continued. "I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to prepare, to ask all those questions you're so good at forming. But I was selfish. I wanted our final years together to be normal, not overshadowed by my diagnosis. I hope someday you can forgive me for that choice." David leaned toward the camera. "But there's something else you need to know. Something about my brothers I never shared with you. Our falling out wasn't some petty family squabble, Chloe. They defrauded my share of the inheritance when I was 19. They used my name on fake documents while I was away at college. When I found out and threatened to expose them, they threatened to implicate me as a willing accomplice." Chloe's hand covered her mouth, her eyes glued to the screen. "I left Lake Arrowhead. I moved to Raleigh. I met your mother. I built a life. I raised you. That was more than enough." His expression hardened. "But my brothers never changed. Whatever they're telling you right now, remember this. They want control of the family property, not out of sentiment, but out of pure greed. And they will use anyone, including my daughter, to get it." The video ended, freezing on David's concerned face. Chloe remained motionless, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "He was protecting us," she whispered finally. "All this time it was more than just his illness." I confirmed gently. "Your uncles aren't the family connection they pretend to be. They are opportunists who see you as the easiest path to what they want." She wiped her tears, anger replacing grief in her expression. "They've been lying to me, haven't they? About everything except the fact that the house is worth millions. That part is true. But they didn't tell you about the full resort project or why the property is so crucial to the developer's plans." Understanding lit up her eyes. "They're trying to con us." "Us," I repeated, feeling a surge of hope. "That means you're back on my side, Mom." "I never left your side." She looked down, ashamed. "I wanted to feel connected to Dad, through his family. They had stories about him as a kid, photos I'd never seen." "I understand," I assured her, reaching my hand across the table to squeeze hers. "Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't foresee. But now we need to be smarter than them together." Chloe straightened up, her expression shifting from devastation to determination, so much like David that my heart ached. "What's the plan?" I smiled, feeling the first real sense of confidence since this ordeal began. "First, we meet with my attorney tonight. Not the family lawyer your uncles want to use, but someone recommended by Mr. Harrison. Then, tomorrow we have an appointment with Summit Resorts."
"Why?"
"Because knowledge is power. And we now know something your uncles don't. Exactly how much the property is truly worth to the developer." I showed her the documents from David's war room. "They think they are dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It's time to show them exactly who they're up against." For the first time since David's death, Chloe laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Dad always said you were the smartest person he ever met. That beneath that quiet literature professor was a strategist who could outmaneuver anyone if properly motivated." "He really said that?" I asked, surprised. "All the time," she smiled, wiping away the last tears. "He also said the biggest mistake anyone could make was to underestimate Naomi Sterling." As we left the coffee shop together, I felt a shift in the dynamic of this battle. The Sterling brothers had unwittingly united us instead of dividing us. They had no idea that their apparent success with Chloe had only set the stage for their ultimate defeat. The real estate situation is only one aspect of the complex legal picture. We've prepared a fair settlement offer that honors David's wishes while recognizing the Sterling family's historical claim to the property. "We're prepared to be very generous," Marcus added, placing a paternal hand on Chloe's shoulder. "1/3 for you, Naomi, 1/3 for Chloe, and 1/3 divided among us, the brothers. Everyone wins." Chloe looked at me expectantly, clearly already convinced by the proposal. "It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this huge place. We could sell the whole thing, walk away with millions, and Dad's family stays united. Your father specifically left this property to me, I said, looking Marcus squarely in the eye. Not for you, not for his brothers. Out of confusion and misplaced sentimentality, Marcus countered smoothly. David wasn't thinking clearly in his final years. A flash of anger burned through me. My husband was perfectly lucid until the day he died. Then why all the secrecy? Isaiah spoke for the first time, his voice softer than his brother's, but no less sharp. Why hide the property purchase from his wife and daughter? Why the elaborate arrangements with the attorney? Those are not the actions of a man thinking rationally. I thought of the videos, the renovated house, the art studio, every element meticulously planned as a final gift. None of it suggested confusion or impaired judgment. Mom, Chloe said, her voice softer now. I know this is hard. Dad left us, and now we're uncovering all these secrets, but this proposal makes financial sense. We'd both be secure for the rest of our lives. The door opened behind them, and Ms. Jackson appeared, her face worried. Is everything all right, Mrs. Sterling? I saw the cars arrive. The brothers turned, visibly irritated by the interruption. Marcus narrowed his eyes. This is a family matter. Ms. Jackson is my employee, I said firmly. She is welcome in my home. Actually, Elijah interjected, her employment status is among the disputed assets pending the resolution of our legal claim. Miss Jackson didn't back down. Mr. David hired me personally. He made me promise I would look after the place, and after Mrs. Naomi if anything happened to him. We'll review all employee contracts, Marcus said dismissively. I had heard enough. I think it's time for all of you to leave. I looked directly at the brothers, then softened my gaze as I turned to Chloe. Except you, of course. You are always welcome to stay. You're not even going to consider their offer? Chloe asked incredulously. I will review any written proposal with my own attorney, I replied. But I will not be pressured in my own home. Marcus' conciliatory mask dropped, revealing the ruthless businessman beneath. This property is worth tens of millions with a resort project. We can do this amicably, or we can make things very difficult. Is that a threat? I asked, calmer than I felt. A reality check, he corrected. You are a university professor facing a legal battle against adversaries with significantly greater resources. David may have had good intentions, but he put you in an untenable position. I thought of the blue folder with his meticulous documentation, the videos showing David's lucid planning, the property that represented his final act of love. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said calmly. Now, please leave. Chloe, you're welcome to stay for lunch if you'd like. She looked conflicted, glancing between me and her newly discovered uncles. I think I'll go with them for now. We have more to discuss. She kissed my cheek quickly. Think about the offer. Mom, please. I watched them leave, a sense of emptiness expanding in my chest. In just 24 hours, my daughter had been drawn into the orbit of men David spent his whole life avoiding. Ms. Jackson waited until the cars disappeared down the driveway before speaking. Mrs. Sterling, there's something you should know, something your husband asked me not to mention, unless it became absolutely necessary. I turned to her, mentally exhausted, but forcing myself to pay attention. What is it? It's about the true extent of the property and what's really hidden here. She gestured toward the conservatory. We better walk. Some things shouldn't be discussed inside the house where the walls might have ears. As I followed her across the lawn, the morning sun illuminated the beautiful property my husband had secretly created. Whatever revelation awaited me, I was sure of one thing. David had anticipated this battle, perhaps even Chloe's vulnerability to his brother's manipulation. The question was, had he prepared me enough to win a fight I never knew was coming? Miss Jackson led me past the main conservatory toward a tool shed I hadn't yet explored. Unlike the perfectly renovated structures on the rest of the property, this building maintained its original rustic appearance, deliberately unimproved to seem unimportant. Your husband was a careful man, Miss Jackson said, producing an old iron key. After his brother's first visit last year, he became even more cautious. They visited before? David never mentioned that. Miss Jackson nodded gravely. They showed up unannounced as soon as they heard about the resort project. Your husband was here overseeing the construction of the art studio. They didn't recognize him at first. He had let his beard grow out during the treatment. The casual mention of David's treatment hit me like a wave of renewed grief. While I was innocently teaching literature classes, my husband was here sick, creating this sanctuary while fending off his predatory brothers. What happened? He watched them from a distance, then left without revealing himself. That night he made changes to the property plans, starting with this. Miss Jackson opened the shed door, revealing an ordinary interior. Gardening tools, equipment, dust mows dancing in the shafts of light streaming through the wall cracks. Ms. Jackson moved confidently toward the back corner, pushing aside several stacked boxes to expose a trap door recessed into the concrete floor. Your husband installed this entrance last winter. The workers thought they were building a wine cellar. She pulled the heavy door upward, revealing a sturdy ladder descending into darkness. After you. Curiosity overriding apprehension, I followed Ms. Jackson down the stairs. At the bottom, she flipped a switch and lights came on, revealing a concrete tunnel stretching out before us. What is this place? Your husband called it the vault. I call it genius. The tunnel stretched for about 100 feet before opening into a large room filled with file cabinets, a table with computer equipment, and walls covered with maps and documents. Welcome to David's war room, Miss Jackson said with a touch of pride. Everything he compiled about his brothers, their businesses, and the true value of the Crestwood estate. I approached the nearest wall where a detailed map showed not only the property, but the surrounding area for miles. Red markings indicated the locations of the resort project with handwritten annotations about values, construction phases, and real estate impact. I don't understand, I said, turning to Miss Jackson. David knew about the resort project. Not at first. He bought this place to renovate it for you, pure and simple. But about 2 years ago, when Summit Resorts began preliminary studies, he hired a real estate consultant to evaluate the impact on Crestwood. Miss Jackson pointed to the map. They uncovered something the developer was trying to keep secret until all land purchases were finalized. The full project is 3 times larger than they publicly announced. I studied the map more closely, noting how the markings extended far beyond the area the press had publicized. Phase 2 of the resort will include a golf course that will require part of the property adjacent to ours, Miss Jackson continued. They've already bought almost all the necessary land except the Crestwood estate, I concluded, beginning to understand. Your husband verified it with 3 independent specialists. This property's strategic position can completely block the planned expansion. Without it, the project loses half its projected value. So, the property is even more valuable than his brothers imagine? Exponentially. But that's not all. Miss Jackson moved toward a file cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. David documented decades of questionable business practices by the 3 brothers. Tax evasion, insider trading, misappropriation of client funds, enough evidence to professionally ruin them if it ever came to light. I leafed through the meticulous documentation recognizing David's thorough approach to problem solving. Email printouts, financial records, sworn affidavit from former employees. He had built an airtight case against his brothers. Why would he compile all this protection? Miss Jackson sat at the table, gesturing for me to take the other chair. He knew they would come for the house as soon as he was gone. He wanted you to have ammunition. I thought of Marcus' smug confidence, Elijah's legal maneuvering, their swift work to win over Chloe. He anticipated everything. Not everything, Miss Jackson said calmly. He didn't expect them to get to your daughter so quickly. The memory of Chloe's seeming betrayal stung. They're manipulating her with half-truths and promises of wealth and playing on her grief. Miss Jackson nodded. She lost her father. Suddenly, they're offering her a connection to him through shared blood and history. A powerful draw for a grieving young woman. She was right. Chloe was always a daddy's girl, sharing David's analytical mind and love for puzzles. His death left her adrift, vulnerable to anyone who offered a connection to him. What do I do now? I asked almost to myself. That depends on what you want, Ms. Jackson replied. You could sell everything and walk away rich, but perhaps forever alienated from your daughter. You could fight the brothers legally using this evidence, which might win the battle, but worsen the family wounds. Or what? You could do what your husband always did. Think 3 steps ahead and find the path no one expects. I considered that as I continued to examine the war room. On the table was a framed photograph I had never seen before. A teenage David standing proudly next to an award-winning orchid. His face lit up with an innocent joy I had rarely glimpsed in the man I married. That was the first Catalia he ever grew, Miss Jackson said, noticing my focus on the photo. The one bright spot in his childhood here. His brothers destroyed it while David was away at school just to hurt him. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. David's support of my love for flowers and art, despite having no personal interest in them. The magnificent conservatory and studio were not just gifts. They were the reclamation of something precious his brothers had stolen. I picked up the photograph, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Miss Jackson, does the laptop with David's videos work down here? She nodded. There's a secure network throughout the property. Your husband made sure of it. Excellent. I need to watch the next few videos ahead of schedule. Then, I want you to schedule a meeting for me. With whom? First, my daughter alone, away from her uncle's influence. Then my attorney. And finally, I looked at the wall of evidence David had compiled against his brothers. I think I'd like to talk to the executives at Summit Resorts. Miss Jackson smiled for the first time since we entered the hidden bunker. You're planning something your husband would approve of. I'm planning something worthy of the man who loved me enough to create all of this, I corrected, a new determination firming my voice. And I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, Mrs. Sterling, Miss Jackson promised. Your husband gave me a second chance when no one else would. I owe him everything, and by extension, I owe it to you. This was one more facet of David I hadn't known. His quiet generosity extending beyond our immediate family, changing lives I had never heard of. As we left the bunker, carefully hiding the entrance again, I felt a strange sense of connection with my late husband. Not the grief that had dominated the last few weeks, but a partnership that somehow continued beyond death. He had left me not just a property and material security, but tools and knowledge to forge my own path. The Sterling brothers believed they were facing a naive widow who was no match for them. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next 48 hours, I barely slept. Fueled by determination and the growing clarity of my plan, I watched an entire week's worth of David's videos in a single night, each one revealing more of his strategy and the depth of his foresight. They will try to divide and conquer, he warned in one recording, as if speaking directly to my current situation. Marcus will be the friendly face, Elijah the legal threat, Isaiah the silent observer, and they will target Chloe. She is the easiest path to destabilize your position. In another video, he showed documents from the developer he had obtained through contacts in the county office. Summit Resorts was determined to keep Phase 2 of the project secret until all necessary land was secured. If they discover that we know about the golf course before they try to buy us out, the negotiating value triples. Armed with David's insights and my own growing understanding, I arranged to meet Chloe at a coffee shop in the city, away from the influence of the Sterling brothers and the emotional pull of the sanctuary David created. She arrived 15 minutes late, already defensive before she even sat down. I can't stay long. Uncle Marcus is taking me to meet some investors this afternoon. Uncle Marcus, I repeated softly. You've become very close in 3 days. She flushed. They've been kind and welcoming, which is more than I can say for you. You're treating Dad's family like enemies. I sipped my coffee, choosing my next words carefully. Do you remember that narrative theory class you loved first semester about how the same story changes completely depending on who's telling it? What does that have to do with our situation? You've only heard their version of the story. I'm asking you to consider that there might be another perspective. Your father's. Dad's dead, she said bluntly, pain flashing in her face. And he obviously didn't trust us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive. I reached into my purse and pulled out a tablet. He actually left something for both of us. What is this? Your father made videos, Chloe.
Hundreds of them.
Messages to guide us after he was gone. I turned the tablet over, queuing up the video David had labeled for Chloe when she needs it. Her face paled. He made videos. He knew he was dying. He was diagnosed 3 years ago with a cerebral aneurysm, I said softly, finally sharing the truth. He chose not to tell us. He wanted to spare us watching him wither. That's impossible. He would have told me, but uncertainty was already creeping into her voice. Watch the video, Chloe. Listen to him. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. David's face appeared. Healthy, vibrant, his eyes crinkling with that smile that was so characteristic of him. Hello, my brilliant girl. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And knowing you, you're probably angry about all the secrets I kept. He chuckled softly. You never liked being kept in the dark about anything, even as a kid. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes as her father continued. I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to prepare, to ask all those questions you're so good at forming, but I was selfish. I wanted our final years together to be normal, not overshadowed by my diagnosis. I hope someday you can forgive me for that choice. David leaned toward the camera. But there's something else you need to know. Something about my brothers I never shared with you. Our falling out wasn't some petty family squabble, Chloe. They defrauded my share of the inheritance when I was 19. They used my name on fake documents while I was away at college. When I found out and threatened to expose them, they threatened to implicate me as a willing accomplice. Chloe's hand covered her mouth, her eyes glued to the screen. I left Lake Arrowhead. I moved to Raleigh. I met your mother. I built a life. I raised you. That was more than enough. His expression hardened. But my brothers never changed. Whatever they're telling you right now, remember this. They want control of the family property, not out of sentiment, but out of pure greed. And they will use anyone, including my daughter, to get it. The video ended, freezing on David's concerned face. Chloe remained motionless, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. He was protecting us, she whispered finally. All this time, it was more than just his illness. I confirmed gently. Your uncles aren't the family connection they pretend to be. They are opportunists who see you as the easiest path to what they want. She wiped her tears, anger replacing grief in her expression. They've been lying to me, haven't they? About everything but the fact that the house is worth millions. That part is true, but they didn't tell you about the full resort project or why the property is so crucial to the developer's plans. Understanding lit up her eyes. They're trying to con us. Us. I repeated, feeling a surge of hope. That means you're back on my side, Mom. I never left your side. She looked down, ashamed. I wanted to feel connected to Dad, through his family. They had stories about him as a kid, photos I'd never seen. I understand, I assured her, reaching my hand across the table to squeeze hers. Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't foresee, but now we need to be smarter than them, together. Chloe straightened up, her expression shifting from devastation to determination, so much like David that my heart ached. What's the plan? I smiled, feeling the first real sense of confidence since this ordeal began. First, we meet with my attorney tonight. Not the family lawyer your uncles want to use, but someone recommended by Mr. Harrison. Then tomorrow, we have an appointment with Summit Resorts. Why? Because knowledge is power. And we now know something your uncles don't. Exactly how much the property is truly worth to the developer. I showed her the documents from David's war room. They think they are dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It's time to show them exactly who they're up against. For the first time since David's death, Chloe laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. Dad always said you were the smartest person he ever met. That beneath that quiet literature professor was a strategist who could outmaneuver anyone if properly motivated. He really said that? I asked, surprised. All the time, she smiled, wiping away the last tears. He also said the biggest mistake anyone could make was to underestimate Naomi Sterling. As we left the coffee shop together, I felt a shift in the dynamic of this battle. The Sterling brothers unwittingly had united us instead of dividing us. They had no idea that their initial apparent success with Chloe had only set the stage for their ultimate defeat. Later that night, with Chloe by my side, I presented my complete plan to the attorney David had recommended for this exact scenario. His expression shifted from professional interest to undisguised admiration as he grasped the full scope of what I was proposing. "Mrs. Sterling," he said finally, "your husband told me you would surprise me with your strategic thinking." He was right. My husband, I replied, was right about many things, including his belief in my capacity, not just to survive his death, but to emerge stronger from the crucible of grief and betrayal. The Sterling brothers arrived at the Crestwood estate exactly when I expected them, at 10 o'clock sharp, 3 days after my meeting with Chloe. Their black SUV drove up the driveway with the confidence of men who believed victory was merely a formality. Behind them followed a silver sedan I didn't recognize, likely their attorney or financial consultant. I watched from the study window, dressed not in the casual clothes they had previously seen, but in a tailored suit I had purchased specifically for this meeting. Appearances matter when orchestrating a reversal, and I intended to present myself not as a grieving widow, but as the formidable adversary David always knew me to be. They've arrived. I alerted Chloe, who appeared from the library looking equally professional in a navy dress, her father's watch, one of his most prized possessions, prominently displayed on her wrist. "Ready?" she asked, nervousness and determination conflicting in her expression. "Completely." I squeezed her hand. "Remember, let them corner themselves first." Miss Jackson appeared. The others came through the back entrance. "They're ready in the dining room as you requested." I nodded my thanks. Perfect timing. The doorbell rang, and Miss Jackson went to answer it with the practiced deference of someone who knew her role in this carefully choreographed performance. "Good morning, gentlemen." I heard her greet them. "Mrs. Naomi and Chloe are waiting this way, please." They entered with the easy familiarity of men accustomed to controlling environments. Marcus led, followed by Elijah with his ever-present legal folder, and Isaiah bringing up the rear. Behind them walked a gray-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated corporate authority. "Naomi." Marcus nodded, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. This is Mr. Chen, the CFO of Sterling Investments. We thought it would be productive to have a specialist join our discussion of the property's potential." So, they had brought in a financial executive to intimidate me with technical jargon and market valuations. Predictable. How thoughtful. I replied smoothly. "I've prepared the dining room for our meeting. Follow me." I led them through the house, noting their evaluative glances at the renovations David had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table had been set with documents at each place setting, water bottles, and coffee, the picture of professional preparation. "Please have a seat," I gestured. "I believe we have much to discuss." As they settled in, expressions of confidence still firmly in place, I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for your previous proposal. It was educational." Marcus' smile widened, clearly interpreting my comment as capitulation. "We're pleased you took the time to consider our offer. With Mr. Chen's expertise, we can discuss the most advantageous arrangement for dividing the property's assets." "Yes, division," I said, picking up a remote control from the table. "That's precisely what I'd like to discuss." I pressed a button, and a hidden screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged surprised glances. Clearly, they did not expect this level of preparation. "If you would direct your attention to the presentation," I continued, clicking the remote again. A detailed map of the Crestwood estate appeared on the screen, showing the property's boundaries, topographical features, and its position relative to the surrounding area. "This is the full survey of the Crestwood estate," I explained. "The entire 25 acres, not just the 10 acres mentioned in your proposal." Elijah shifted uncomfortably. "The western portion is an undevelopable preservation area. We excluded it for the sake of simplicity." "How considerate," I replied with irony, "except for one small detail. Another click of the remote and the map overlaid with the full resort project, all phases, including the golf course Summit Resorts, had been keeping secret. Mr. Chen straightened in his chair, his professional mask slipping as he leaned in to study the projection with sudden interest. As you can see, I continued calmly, Phase 2 of the project extends predominantly over the western area of our property, the acres you so generously offered to exclude from our fair division. Marcus's face turned red. Those plans are just speculation. The analysis from Sterling Investments indicates. Actually, a new voice interrupted as the side door opened. Those plans have been confirmed by the Summit Resorts board itself. The Sterling brothers turned in shock as Mr. Lalston, the CEO of Summit Resorts, walked into the room, followed by my attorney and 2 executives in formal suits. "What is this?" Marcus demanded, half-rising. "This," I replied pleasantly, "is a meeting about the true value and future of the Crestwood estate. Mr. Lalston has expressed a significant interest in the property, particularly after reviewing the complete documents my husband compiled regarding the resort project." Mr. Chen shot a betrayed look at the Sterling brothers. "I was told you had exclusive negotiating rights to this property." "They do not," my attorney interjected calmly, placing additional documents on the table. "Mrs. Sterling holds clear and unquestionable title to the entire property. The documents the Sterling gentleman showed you are without legal merit." Hand on the table. "This property has been in the Sterling family for generations. David had a moral obligation." "Moral obligations." Chloe spoke for the first time, her voice firm despite her hand gripping the water glass. "Like the moral obligation you had to my father when you defrauded his inheritance or forged his signature on documents or threatened to incriminate him if he exposed you." The brothers froze, the color draining from their faces. "What exactly is she talking about?" Mr. Chen asked, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Perhaps this will clarify," I said, nodding to my attorney, who distributed sealed envelopes to everyone at the table. Copies of the documentation my husband preserved regarding certain transactions involving the Sterling family assets. "I believe the statute of limitations has expired on some of these matters, but the IRS and state tax authorities might find others quite interesting." Elijah opened his envelope, examining the contents with growing alarm. "These are private family matters," he stammered, completely irrelevant to the current discussion. "On the contrary," I refuted, finally taking my seat at the head of the table. "They establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior that directly impacts your credibility in these negotiations. Behavior that continued when you deliberately misled Mr. Chan about your position to negotiate this property." The room fell silent as the Sterling brothers realized the totality of their exposure. David had documented everything, their historical crimes against him, their recent manipulations, and their attempts to appropriate valuable assets while appearing generous. "What do you want, Naomi?" Marcus finally asked, his facade of confidence crumbling. "I want you to leave the Crestwood estate and never return," I stated simply. "I want you to cease all attempts to contest my ownership or manipulate my daughter. In exchange, these documents will remain private." Mr. Chen stood up abruptly. "I believe my involvement in this matter was based on incomplete and potentially fraudulent information. If you'll excuse me, Mrs. Sterling, I will contact you directly for any future discussions." He shot a look of contempt at the brothers before exiting. Marcus' face reddened as he watched his ally depart. "You have no idea what you're doing, Naomi. The development costs for the western area are prohibitive. The logistics alone." "Actually," Mr. Lalston interjected, "Summit Resorts has developed new construction methods specifically suited for this type of terrain. We are prepared to make Mrs. Sterling an offer that recognizes both the challenges and the exceptional potential of this property." As the meeting continued, transforming from the Sterling brothers' planned takeover into my carefully orchestrated counteroffensive, I caught Chloe's eye across the table. Her faint smile conveyed everything: pride, vindication, and the bittersweet recognition that David had prepared us for this moment, even from beyond the grave. When the Sterling brothers finally left 2 hours later, defeated, exposed, and legally bound by the agreement my attorney had pre-prepared, the future of the Crestwood estate was secured exactly as David had envisioned, not divided among greedy relatives, not sold to the highest bidder, but preserved as a legacy for the family he had chosen and loved, Chloe and me. As their vehicles disappeared down the driveway, Miss Jackson appeared at my side. "Your husband would be proud," she said calmly. "You outsmarted them exactly, as he believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the road, a strange mixture of emotions washing over me. Triumph mingled with grief, strength emerging from vulnerability. "We're not finished yet," I replied, thinking of the videos that still awaited on David's laptop and of the future that stretched out before us. This was only the first battle, but it was one we won decisively, using the weapons David had meticulously prepared and the strength he always saw in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. The weeks following the Sterling brothers' defeat passed in a blur of practical matters, finalizing our settlement, meetings with Summit Resorts to structure a mutually beneficial agreement that would preserve the property's most sensitive portion, and a careful inventory of everything David had created at the Crestwood estate. Chloe stayed with me during this period, her initial resentment over her father's secrets transforming into appreciation for his foresight. We established a routine of watching his daily videos together each morning, both of us finding solace and guidance in his posthumous presence. "Did you have any idea?" Chloe asked one evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Any suspicion that Dad was sick or planning all this?" I considered the question carefully, searching my memories for missed signs. There were little things that make sense in retrospect. His insistence on updating our legal documents 3 years ago. The way he would sometimes look at us during dinner, almost memorizing our faces. His sudden interest in photographing ordinary moments. "I just thought he was going through a middle-aged appreciation phase," Chloe said, smiling sadly. "In a way, he was," I mused, sipping my tea. "Just not for the reasons we imagined. The biggest change was how he stopped putting off personal things. Your father was always a someday person about personal affairs. Someday we'd take that trip to Europe. Someday he'd learn photography. Someday we'd renovate the kitchen. Then suddenly he started doing things instead of just talking about them, creating something lasting." I shook my head, still adapting to the magnitude of what he had concealed. I never imagined he was racing against time, creating a legacy because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it flourish. The executives at Summit Resorts were surprised when I outlined my conditions for property access. Instead of selling everything for a single lump sum, as most landowners would do, I insisted on an agreement that prioritized environmental preservation, established strict limits on development, and guaranteed that the conservatory and the art studio would remain intact. "Mrs. Sterling, these terms are highly unusual in the industry," the chief negotiator said. "Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms," I replied, channeling David's quiet confidence. "This land is special. It can wait until we agree on responsible methods to develop it." To my surprise, Mr. Alluston, the CEO, was intrigued rather than deterred by my approach. "Your husband mentioned you were a literature and arts graduate before becoming a professor," he observed. "He said you would insist on doing it the right way, not just the lucrative way." Another piece of David's planning revealed he had established contacts with select people in the industry, paving the way for negotiations he knew would occur after his death. A month after claiming my inheritance, I was in the art studio David had created, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating a canvas on the easel. After more than a decade away from painting, I finally picked up the brush again, hesitantly at first, then with increasing confidence. Today's subject waited patiently in the conservatory, visible through the studio windows, the rare blue orchid David had found because he remembered a casual comment I made years ago. Miss Jackson taught me about orchid cultivation, my fingers gradually regaining the dexterity I thought I had lost forever. "Mom." Chloe appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. "Today's video is different. I think you should watch this one alone." I put down my brush, curious. We had grown accustomed to watching David's daily messages together. Different how? It's marked specifically for day 30. He titled it, "When Naomi Starts Painting Again." She handed me the computer with a gentle smile. "He knew you would eventually come back to this." Alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was rediscovering, I opened the laptop and pressed play. David appeared, sitting in this very room before the art supplies had been installed, the space empty except for the magnificent windows. "Hello, my love," he began, his smile warming me across time. "If you are seeing this, you found your way back to art, back to the passion you set aside for our family all these years." I touched the screen gently, tears welling up. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy," he continued. "What we leave behind, what marks we make on the world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children or wealth or achievement. But there is another kind of legacy, the enablement of possibility in those we love." He gestured to the empty room around him. "This space is not finished yet, but in my mind I can see it complete, filled with light and color and your creations. I picture you standing at an easel, brush in hand, finally giving form to the visions you have carried inside you for all these years." I looked at the portrait of the orchid on my easel, struck by how closely it aligned with David's imagination. "I structured everything to give you freedom, Naomi," he went on. "Financial security, through the resort agreement, protection from my brother's interference, a beautiful space to create. But what you do with that freedom, that is your legacy to build, not mine to determine." He leaned toward the camera, his expression intense. "The house, the conservatory, the art studio, they are not the inheritance. They are just the tools. The real inheritance is possibility, the opportunity to become more fully yourself, unrestrained." I paused the video, overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding. David had known me better than I knew myself. He had seen the dormant artist still alive inside the professor and mother I had become. When I resumed the video, his expression had softened. "I have one request, though it is yours to accept or reject. In the closet behind this room, there is a large canvas I commissioned before the diagnosis. It is blank, waiting. When you are ready, truly ready, I hope you will create something for it, something that captures not just what you see, but what you feel about this place that brought me back to my origins and will lead you to your future." The video ended with his familiar sign-off. "Until tomorrow, my love." I stood motionless for several minutes, processing his words. Then, driven by an impulse, I went to the storage closet and found exactly what he had described, a massive, custom-sized blank canvas, perfect for the main wall in the great room, the heart of the house. In the following weeks, as autumn painted the landscape in shades of gold, I made countless sketches, trying to capture the essence of the Crestwood estate and what it represented. None satisfied me until one morning, watching Chloe tend to the orchids in the conservatory, something clicked. The painting gradually took shape. Not a traditional landscape, but a blend of real and metaphorical elements. The house, as it now existed, in the background, rendered with photographic accuracy. In the foreground, a series of translucent layers showed what had come before: the abandoned property David bought, the family home of his childhood, and beneath all that, the ancient land that had witnessed generations come and go. Uniting these temporal layers were two figures, a woman and a young woman, their features only subtly suggested, enough to represent both specific and universal journeys. Behind them, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, a third figure, a man holding a blue orchid in his hands, offering it to the other two. When the painting was finally complete, Ms. Jackson helped me hang it in its designated spot in the great room. Chloe stepped back, studying it, tears in her eyes. "It's Dad, isn't it? And us." She traced the paths of the figures with her finger in the air. The past, the present, and the future of this place. "Legacy," I said simply. "Not what is left behind, but what continues forward." That night, as I watched the sunset from the porch of what was now truly my home, I felt David's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuing partnership. He had given me not just a property and material security, but a framework for reinvention, the freedom to discover who Naomi Sterling could become when she was no longer constrained by circumstance. The resort agreement would provide financial stability forever. The house would evolve according to our stewardship, and I would continue to bring beauty into the world through rediscovered talents, creating my own legacy alongside the one David had so carefully prepared. A few months later, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang while I was working in the studio. Miss Jackson appeared at the door with a cautious expression. Marcus Sterling is here. Alone. My body immediately tensed. Does he have any legal documents? No, that I saw. He looks different, less arrogant somehow. He just said he'd like a few minutes of your time. I considered refusing, but curiosity won out. I'll see him on the porch. Don't invite him in. Marcus was thinner than the last time I saw him. The lines around his eyes were deeper. He turned as I opened the door, his expression surprisingly humble. Naomi, thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Marcus? Our agreement was quite clear. I'm not here to contest the agreement. He looked out at the property, then back at me. I'm here to apologize. Of all the things I expected, an apology was low on the list. I crossed my arms, waiting for him to continue. I've done some reflecting over the past few months about David, about our relationship, about the choices I made. He swallowed. I didn't expect you to win. I should have. David was always the smartest of us. That's not an apology, I observed. You're right, he nodded. I apologize for trying to take this house from you, for trying to manipulate Chloe, and for all the years I made David's life harder than it needed to be. I looked at him for signs of falsehood, but only found exhaustion and possibly genuine remorse. Why now? I have cancer, he said simply. Stage 4. My prognosis isn't good. Puts things in perspective. The echo of David's illness was impossible to ignore. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't come for sympathy. I came because my little brother built something beautiful here, and I, in my arrogance and greed, almost destroyed it. He pulled a small packet from his pocket. I found this in our father's belongings. I thought you or Chloe might want it. I cautiously accepted the packet. Inside was a faded photograph. 3 boys under a huge tree, the smallest, obviously David, holding a tiny potted orchid. It was the first one he ever grew, Marcus explained, before he left the sentence unfinished, the guilt visible on his face. I looked at the young David in the photo, then at the broken man in front of me. Would you like to come see the conservatory? I offered, surprising both of us. David cultivated some truly impressive orchids. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, he followed me onto the property he once tried to steal. As we walked among the flowers his brother had cultivated with such love, I saw Marcus the way David must have seen him in the videos. Not a villain to be defeated, but a man tormented by choices he couldn't undo. Forgiveness wouldn't erase the past or change the future, but perhaps it was part of the legacy. 2. The capacity to choose compassion when revenge would be easier. I'll never know if the ghost of repentance that brought Marcus to my door was genuine or just another calculated act. What I do know is that when he left, something at the Crestwood estate subtly shifted, as if a final chapter had been closed. That night, I watched David's very last video. He smiled at me from the screen, his eyes filled with a peace I never noticed when he was alive. This is the end of our daily journey together, my love. A year of messages to guide you through the first months without me. But it's not the end of us. He paused, looking into the camera as if he could truly see me. We continue in the decisions you will make, in the love we share with Chloe, and in the beauty you will create from here on out. The house I feared for so long is now yours to transform. The secret I kept has become your gift. The promise I asked you to make, only to later release you from it, has become the path to your liberation. He smiled one last time. Never forget, Naomi, you were always the true strength between us. Until someday, my love. The screen went dark, and in the silence that followed, I found not just loss, but possibility. The house David had asked me never to visit had become my home. The secrets he kept transformed into my strength, and the promise he had asked me to make had become the key to my future. I rose and walked toward the large painting in the living room, observing the layers of past, present, and future I had portrayed. David had done more than leave me a property. He had given me the opportunity to rediscover myself. The house he feared had become the house he loved. And now it was mine to continue transforming one day at a time.